Hello and welcome to the Tumble Tankard. I'm Jim, aka Argent Wind, and I am your host here for DM&D Chat. Today we're going to be talking about encounters, but before we get started on that, I want to couple announcements here. First of all, thank you for your support on the first two episodes we've had here. It's been great and it's good to see. Um, if you are looking for a community of gamers to hang out with, to play games with, MMOs, D&D, all kinds of things, check out the House of Gamers. Link will be in the description below. So hop on in there and jump in and find some people to play with. Um, Also, we do our channel, YouTube channel, and our Twitch channel does stream games on Saturdays and Sundays. I stream the game on Saturday, Avarice: The Shattered World. We're just getting into our 10th month of streaming, so a lot of history back there. So feel free to watch all the videos, keep current, hang out, and have fun. Um, but with that, though, we're going to jump in today talking about encounters. Um, so first of all, one thing with encounters to realize is there are a lot of resources out there about encounters, encounter ideas, encounter types. You can find things in the Dungeon Master's guides, other role playing games, lots of videos, lots of resources online. So if you're getting ideas for, if you're kind of trying to find ideas for encounters, check around. There's a lot of places to get some inspiration and find things out there. But what's the point of encounters? Well, as we talked about in the first episode about world building, your setting, your locations, your NPCs, all the things that your players interact with. Episode two, the campaign, the story and plot that the players are driving through, either more of an open world or more of a driven narrative type of campaign. Encounters are the lifeblood of your story. They are literally what your players are doing to interact with your world and to interact with the setting that you picked up here. So it's really important to think, how do I get these encounters to be more lively? How to make them more interesting? How to make them so that the players really engage with them? And hopefully, when you establish your campaign in session zero, talk to your players, find out what types of encounters they like, whether it be role playing encounters, investigations, challenge encounters, research, shopping. There's all kinds of encounters they can get into. Um, and then, of course, combat encounters. That's a whole different thing we'll talk about a little bit later on here. But you'll get an idea from your players what they really engage with, what they like. And if you have an idea of that in session zero, you can kind of tailor make some of your encounters to capitalize on what they're interested in. That's going to help them really drive into the campaign and really get into and enjoy what you're setting up for them. Now, one thing real quick here. Let me. That's a whole different thing. Okay. Sorry, I just realized I didn't have chat up, so I can't see the chat. Let me fix that real fast. Nope. Okay. So, in talking about the different types of encounters, as I mentioned, role playing, as I mentioned, uh, investigation encounters, all these things where they're basically trying to figure out something is going on. It'd be something in the plot, something as part of your campaign. They're driving on through some series of challenges or fact finding or anything else to kind of to engage with the plot and move things along. So, how do we make this more fun for everybody involved, yourself included? So, some ways to improve your encounters, just to make them kind of come to life and to really get players involved with them. First off, be descriptive. When they're encountering something, you want to paint a good picture for them. Your encounters are similar to a scene in a TV show or a movie, a chapter in a book that you're reading, or a series of panels in a comic book or something like that. It's a whole sequence of events that takes place. And to draw them a picture, to give them that mental image, really helps to draw them into the story and get them inspired to what's going on. So things like in your descriptions, obviously what they see. You don't need to describe every little detail, but the major things. If there's a giant desk in the room, an important thing about that desk is it facing the wall? Is it facing the door? That right there makes a entirely different encounter. So make sure they understand where things are placed in the room. Is there a bookshelf? Is there a guard? Is there a suit of armor in the corner? How is the room lit? So the things they see, the major things that they're going to see in there, and if you have a digital map of some kind or some sort of a picture that they're looking at there, that will help. But it's really important to kind of give them that idea of like what they're seeing and then go beyond. What do they hear? Is the room quiet? Is there a rushing wind somewhere? Is there a sputtering of torch of flames from the candelabras on the ceiling or the sconces on the walls? Is there a smell in the air? Is there wood smoke? Is there incense? Um, as they walk across the floor, do their footsteps echo through the room? Do they clack on wood or stone? Is there a carpet that muffles everything? These are all things to help paint that picture and get your players thinking about what's there and kind of draw them in to the scene, making them part of it. So be descriptive and go beyond, go into the sensory images. Go into those things that really help them visualize and be a part of the scene. With your encounters, one thing a lot of people do, and I've done this too as well, and I've seen many DMs here, is don't overuse skill checks. Most encounters, challenges, role playing, investigation, they're going to call for skill checks of some kind. But if you make everyone test over and over for things, if you're walking through a dungeon, for example, it's kind of one long encounter. You're walking along until you find something. Either go into a room and encounter a monster, or move along the place and encounter a trap. If you make them check every 5 feet and make stealth checks and make perception checks and investigation checks, it becomes more about the roles and less about what's going on. So really think, kind of be intentional with your skill checks. Utilize those passives. Those players have passive perception, have passive insight, passive investigation. Those things will tell you which players are likely to notice things. And so they're walking down a dungeon, and rather than having them make checks every 5 feet, make checks at every door they pass, every time they turn a corner, make another check, just realize that person with the high passive investigation or the high passive perception, all you need to do is say, hey, you notice something a little strange about the floor, or you hear a sound from somewhere behind you. Now they go, oh, there's something to do here. Now an encounter begins where they start making checks for investigation. What is that strange thing on the floor? What is that sound behind me? Is it footsteps? Is it a monster? Is it claws on stone? What is it? So now the encounter has begun where they're investigating and trying to find things out. It didn't involve having to make a bunch of checks that didn't matter. You basically painted the situation and put things before them that made them want to start checking for things. There's a good distinction there. And understand, the more you make them roll, they just sort of either get frustrated or they can just kind of break any kind of immersion you're trying to go for. If you're trying to paint a scene and set a mood and then say, roll a perception check. Okay, well, now the rolls start popping up and you have to like, okay, you got a 19, you got a 12, you got a thing, and you start saying those numbers out loud and everything else. All that mood you set is gone. Like, so let the mood grow, let the encounter build to a point where now things are happening. And in the combat encounter, that's rolling for initiative. Things have begun. And that's the whole thing there. If it's an investigation encounter or a role playing encounter, you don't make them roll for everything they say to a person for persuasion. You don't make them roll for every time they try to uh, make them back off for intimidation. You don't need to make an insight check for every single thing the person's saying. You just let the encounter happen and pull in have them make checks when it matters. So a fun one they can do. And yeah, exactly. It's something to point out. Plus, if everyone fails, they miss something. There's also the fun thing of like you roll and you see your roll as a 2 and you go, oh, I just failed the perception check. We're in trouble. So again, it's one of those things of like they see what they roll. Everyone, or especially if everyone fails, they run into problems. And we'll get into that one in a second here. Um, Before you have them make checks, have the players describe what they're doing. They walk into a room for the first time. And rather than saying, you walk in the room, you describe a couple things, make a perception check. Instead, have them say, Here's the room. Here's the layout. What do you want to do? Player A goes, I want to check the desk. I want to stand in the hallway and make sure no one comes up behind us. I'm going to start looking at the walls and start looking for secret doors. So you get an idea of who's doing what, and then you start calling for rolls. Okay, you're in the hallway listening for anyone coming. Make a perception check. You're looking at the desk. Make an investigation check. Or even better, you're looking at the desk. Here's what you see. There's 6 drawers. The top one on the right is locked. There's something some kind of writing on a paper on the top here, and there's something in this drawer that's loose over here. Now they say, well, the locked one, I want to see if it's a trap. Investigation check. And so now you start like driving into what the nitty gritty is. Person checking the walls. They're looking for secret doors. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe there is. But the idea that now they're starting to look for things, then you call for a check and say, okay, with that roll, you're fairly certain there's no traps, there's no secret doors, there's nothing else in this room here. However, you might find this, and so throw something out to them, which gets us something that I like to do with especially investigation or perception checks. Start low and work your way up. So you have that baseline that you can't you fail a perception check. It doesn't mean you went blind. It just means you didn't find anything significant. So start with the lowest person and go, okay, you know what? You can catch the smell of this thing, and you may get a few more details about the room. That now that they're looking for it, okay, you can tell that yeah, those candles on the wall are it must be magical because there's no flame coming there. There's no smoke coming from them. You don't smell anything. They're just flickering on the wall like they must be magical. Um, Whereas you make your way up to the next person that goes, okay, I rolled a 15. Okay, well, give them a little bit more detail. Up to the person who rolled a 19 or a 25. Then you give the really nitty gritty details of what the cool things that everyone else may have missed, but they got. So start low and work your way up with those checks. The same thing can be true for stealth checks. The idea that person that rolled low, well, they stepped on a twig when they're walking through the forest. But the person who rolls super high might counteract that. And now, wait, shh. They pause. Everyone else keeps moving slowly. And you just have that stealth check build, and where the people that made middle level rolls, they don't have a problem. They move quietly. They don't make any noise. But that high one, that low one sort of cancel each other out, and they start working through things and working through these encounters. And so be so that kind of gets into the idea of being more descriptive with how they succeed, how they do things, um, and what the results are, rather than just saying, "Okay, you failed, and this happens." Oh, you succeeded, nothing happens. Give them what they help them draw them in there by telling them what they did well, or what they found, or what things they what details they got that somebody else might have missed. Um, Focus on what's fun and interesting. Like if people are interested in what's going on, they're going to be a lot more driven to keep exploring, keep doing things. So you want to think about what's fun for you to describe, what's fun for the players to interact with, and what keeps things moving along. There's a great story I have of a friend of mine that they made this. They went in this dungeon, and they went through or they're in this abandoned city, and they go in the first abandoned building, and the DM has them all roll perception checks, and they rolled a smattering of different numbers and else, and they found nothing. Even the person rolled a natural 20, found nothing. Okay, let's go to the next building. Roll perception checks. Same thing. They found nothing. Like at that point, why are we bothering to roll? Why are we looking? It's like skip ahead till you find something interesting, or maybe that those high rolls on those initial things saying, hey, you hear something, not in this building, but somewhere nearby, out in the streets, there's something echoing on the wind. Build that tension up to where there's something that is interesting that happens. So you don't need to like have every single thing they do be something big and epic, but you want to think what's going to build up to where that epic moment or that big confrontation or where that big thing is going to happen. So the encounter should build. and lead to something that's fun and interesting for everybody involved. Something that this applies to, it often applies a little more to combat encounters, which we're going to do just a minute here, but also non-combat encounters is what I've heard referred to often, and I like to call the rule of cool. And I've heard a number of different GMs and DMs out there that use this concept. And the idea is that somebody does something that's just awesome, either really cinematic or delivers that great line or that really intimidating phrase for someone while they're interrogating someone. Don't let the dice take that moment away from them. And so use the rule of cool. They're going to succeed. So I'm going to give you two phrases to help out with. The first one, for things that are time sensitive, like trying to pick a lock or trying to pick somebody's pocket or trying to do something super fast so nobody notices. Rather than having them make a check, use the phrase, roll to see how long it takes you. Now, if they roll low, it's going to build up. They're trying to pick that lock. Someone's coming. Oh God, we just can't get in here. And so that low roll turns into a tension building moment. They still succeed because it doesn't help the encounter if they fail. They can't get past something or they get stuck with somewhere. They can't do it. So the idea that now that low roll is a tension building moment that leads up to something that's kind of like everyone's kind of pushing it. Oh God, we got it. And we make it. As opposed to the super high roll where they just go, they make this look easy and they just click, done, and we're in. So again, you have that idea of you're not going to fail, but roll to see how long it takes you. And another one, and I see comment for your from our player there with Trevor. Here's another fun one to use, another phrase to use. Roll to see how good this looks, or roll to see how well you succeed. And either variation works there. And again, they describe some cool acrobatic maneuvers, some great attack. Again, that line, that perfect interrogation line, roll to see how well you succeed. And now they roll low. They still succeed, but it might look sloppy. Or the person's like, you're trying to persuade somebody or interrogate someone like, I don't know. Well, okay, yeah. And so they reluctantly agree with it. As opposed to you do something amazing and it's like it looks awesome. It goes off exactly as described there. You land in that 3-point stance on top of that building. You deliver that line, and the guy just okay, yeah, I agree. Or they actually just like melt in your hands in a role playing encounter, kind of like that. So again, that idea of you're not going to fail. Roll to see how well you succeed. So two little tools there to help encounters. And again, players love when their characters get to do cool things. So let those encounters be about the characters doing awesome stuff. There's always chances for failures. If they do something great, if they come up with a great idea, let it succeed. Okay. So let's turn our sights to combat. Now, combat is a big part of any role-playing game, especially D&D, of course. Delving through dungeons and running into monsters, fighting dragons, demons and undead, crazy hordes of skeletons or kobolds or orcs, or just all the kind of combats you have there. And some things to make combat more interesting. I mean, we've all been in combats where you're just, okay, I roll a 10. That's a 16. Okay, does that beat their armor class? Cool. Okay. Okay, roll damage. Okay, 12 damage. Uh, I'll use my bonus action to do this. And then, okay, next person in the initiative. It, while the numbers can be interesting and they can kind of build up that, hey, I rolled a natural 20. Yay, here's the, oh, great damage. Awesome. What really makes a counter interesting is descriptions. If as a player, say what you're doing. Make that cool thing. I want to shoot this guy dead in the eyes. I want to try to cut the guy's arm off and disarm him literally. I want to trip him. I want to blast him with a bolt of fire. All of these things are really cool considering actions, but then let the dice tell the story. So that if they roll really well and they roll really good damage, describe what happens. Talk about that deep cut in the arm and the guy wincing in pain and fighting to hold on to his weapon, maybe switching to his left hand so he can keep fighting. Um, and or the firebolt catching him on fire, and the fire flares up in front of his eyes, and he blinks and goes blind for a moment there as he pats out the singed, the little flames licking up over his shirt. Again, you don't need to do this every time, but when you can, use those descriptions to help tell the story. Make it more than just the dice rolls. Make it more than just the numbers. Make it about the story. So, some things to make combat, though, more interesting overall. Beyond descriptions, how do you design encounters that are going to make something feel more epic, that are going to make something uh, do more, make the players feel more they've accomplished something bigger? Well, for enemy types, vary the enemy types and their abilities. If they're fighting goblins, fine. Use the goblin stats, but then give maybe one of the goblins is a little bit bigger and he's carrying a big club and he likes to go melee attacks. And then this guy is a really sneaky one with a bow and he wants to stay back and shoot arrows. So now you have three different goblins that all have very similar stats. Maybe you give the burly one with the club plus one more strength, and you give the burly one with the quick sneaky one with a bow plus one more dex. And the average guy is just the average guy doing his normal thing. So, but that way you now have three different enemies instead of one type that have different ways of fighting, different tactics. That burly one, even though he gets hit, he may stay in there and fight. He wants to beat things down with his club. While the normal sized goblin, like, hey, this is getting a little dicey. I'm going to run. And the one in the back might just keep shooting arrows until someone gets near and then just disengage and take off. So think about the varying the types and abilities. And that kind of gets into the second idea here of using tactics and movement. Monsters shouldn't just stand around. Unless there's a reason for it, they're not going to just stand there slugging away at someone. When they get hurt, if they can, they're going to back off. If they see an opportunity where they can gang up on somebody, they're probably going to do that. Unless the monster is just kind of a not very intelligent, a very aggressive monster, they're going to think in ways of how do I make the most of this for myself? And if I'm getting hurt, I'm going to leave these things that are hurting me. So use those tactics and movement. Monsters can retreat. Let them be smart. There's no reason to leave a monster sitting there getting beat on for no reason when they have the ability to get away. So, or they have the ability to gain the advantage by changing their tactics, by moving to a different position, by doing things. And that kind of gets into when you design your combat encounters, make sure there's interesting things like breaks in line of sight, things in the way. If something's on fire, make sure that's marked and people know this is on fire now and now it's changed the battlefield. If there's different levels of terrain, like people can hop up on buildings or you're fighting on a hill slope or in trees or on a hill. These are all things that can change the encounter to different things and make it more dynamic, more interesting. With those boss battles, everyone's had the situation where they fought that big crazy monster, that dragon, that beholder, that lich, some kind of big monster that's there. And I will tell you this as a DM, try to avoid the one and done monsters. If you have a single monster against a party, I don't care what CR it is, I don't care what legendary actions it has there, it's not going to last unless it's got backup or ways of replenishing itself or ways of gaining the advantage, either through a staged boss fight where they have different abilities at different levels of hit points, or they have multiple phases to the battle. One single creature is very rarely going to lead to a really interesting encounter unless there's a lot going on in the environment. So with a big boss monster, they're going to have layer actions. They're going to have legendary actions that heal them or change the layout of the battlefield or do something that's going to make things change and be dynamic throughout the battlefield. So in combat encounters, you want to look at How do I make this interesting throughout the course of the combat? So to do that, the boss should have minions or something it can do to call on. Either it summons up something to help fight it, or it's got people waiting in the next room that'll rush in and help it. Just things that can, again, change the course of the battlefield, draw people off from just fighting on the monster. Because I don't care what it is, you just keep smacking away at something until it falls down. You're not going to have a really satisfying, interesting encounter unless there's a lot going on. And I've been in a lot of fights where there could be some crazy things happening. And the more the monster moves, the more the boss changes, the more people there are, the more things there are to do, the more interesting the encounter. Um, so the last thing I want to talk about with encounters, and I think this came up a little bit in the last session, the last episode as well here, is scripting. Uh, what you put into an encounter. There's no way you're going to plan for everything in an encounter. Because you don't know what your players are going to do. They might decide to talk to this person. They might decide to just leave him alone. They might decide to shoot him and kill him instead. So you can never quite know exactly how an encounter is going to go. But you can get some ideas. So think the bare minimum for an encounter. Again, the description of the area. Think about what happens if they succeed in the encounter, whatever success is going to be. What happens if they fail? Or what happens if they just sort of muddle their way through? So think about what the outcomes of an encounter are going to be. Now, again, you can't plan for everything. You can't know exactly how things are going to work out. But at least if you have some ideas of this is something that can happen as a result of this. This is something that can change the course of this encounter. Um, but you got to know they're not set in stone. So it takes practice. It takes time and effort to kind of put that in there. But the more you try to script out an encounter and say, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, this is going to happen, it's going to end up looking more like a choose your own adventure novel. Well, if they do this, this will happen. But they do this, then this will happen. But they do it over here, now it's going to go to these two things. And because it's a branching insanity that you're not going to be able to plan for it all. So don't try to over-plan encounters. Get an idea of what's there. Think about what success means. Think about what failure means for the encounter. And then let the players drive their way through. An important thing on that as well for success and failure is you have to plan for failure. If you have something where if they don't succeed in this encounter, the plot stops, you painted yourself into a corner. You need to think about if they don't succeed here, what happens instead? Because, or if they choose not to go this route, what alternative is there? I said, you don't need to script everything, but just have an idea of what the possible outcomes are. If they go off in a different direction, well, now you're kind of improving, but at least you have an idea of what it means to succeed and what it means to fail. You're going to be a lot better off for your encounters and how to move from one to another. So I hope that helped with some ideas about encounters here. Hopefully, I'm seeing a few people in chat here. What are some questions you have? What's some things you have about encounters and about things that you're running into? Anyone have any questions there? Let you guys think about it for a second there. I do want to, while you think about that, and hopefully get a question here in a moment. My last session, my players might know this. Um, I made a mistake. I planned for characters to go to a village a certain way. They chose to go an entirely different way that I wasn't planning for. So what ended up happening was the way I laid out the place they were going, the direction they came in had a whole bunch of enemies, and the encounter ramped up super fast, and they were right in the middle of it right off the bat. So I had planned this whole thing of like, to find a little bit about some, maybe they ran into a scouting party, and then they moved on to the village to where they were headed, and realized that if they'd gone this way, they would have found out a little bit more information and a little bit more information, a little bit more information, and they would have gotten a little bit. But because they went a totally different direction, it changed the encounter completely. And so I had to adjust for that. And what I planned was a series of short encounters leading up to a big one, ended up being big one right away because I kind of over planned for how they would go, not thinking they're going to try a different way, and it led to some scrambling on my part. I'm not going to lie. So there was the idea that as much as you plan, they can always throw you for a loop. They can always go for a different way, and you do your best. So here's the question here. Keep sessions fun and consistent. How do you balance encounters per session? Meaning, do you have one session based around combat? Next week, something like a shopping episode. Um, it really depends on the plot and where it's going. Sometimes a big epic combat may take most of, if not all, a session, depending on how long you play it. If your sessions are 2 or 3 hours, maybe up to 4 hours there, a combat could take that long if it's a very complicated, long, drawn-out combat. Um, so to balance encounters per session, you really want to think about just what is happening, where they're going. And I will say this, if the players are enjoying themselves in that role play encounter, if they're taking their time to do that research and figure things out and check things out, let them. You don't need to push them and dictate how long they do things. Now you can push it along by like kind of instituting, like, they're taking their sweet time investigating a someone's study, but then they hear guards coming because patrols happen. So if you want to move things along, you can kind of do things that way. But if they're really enjoying themselves and checking things out, gauge your party's interest level and gauge what they're into, and then let that kind of be your guide. But if you have some things you need to get into, think of ways, and that may be something in your encounter design, is think of ways you can push it along. Think of ways you can kind of steer it back on track. Okay. So again, uh, yeah. So I mean, really, again, use your players as your guide. If they're having fun, if you're all into it, let that be how you balance things. So yeah, excellent question there. Another one, how do you deal with an encounter being directed to another that you aren't prepped for? Is it all thinking on your feet? Are there any tips and tricks? Um, I will say this. If you planned out an encounter, there are ways you can kind of bring them back into the right direction, and that's where you need to think on your feet. But if if they're if the players are going in a direction and they suddenly decide to go somewhere else, well, they don't know where that new direction is. They don't know what's over there. So if they were supposed to go this way, and this gets back into the railroading thing and hiding the rails. If the party is going along and they decide, nope, we're going to go this way. Well, they don't know what was ahead of them. You could just say that where they were headed is actually here now, and now they go there still. They don't know that unless you tell them or kind of make it so that they, like, no matter what they do, this is where they go. You can steer them in the right direction there without making it a railroad if you, again, hide those rails. They don't know what's coming. So you can shift an encounter to what you need it to be if you have an idea what has to happen. Like if you have a sequence of events A to B to C to D, and they go A to B and they will try to go off to here, well, move C. Move it to where they're going. Or have something there that steers them back on track. Like, and try to avoid just saying nothing's there, go back to where you were. Like, give them something, be it an NPC that just says, um, I I I I saw some bandits and I ran from them. They were that direction over there or something, and give them someone to interact with, something to find out, some information to find out, and maybe now they're going to go back in the right direction of where you want them to go. So So it is somewhat thinking on your feet, but in terms of tips and tricks, again, either plan for an encounter that's going to happen regardless of where they go. I have a good one. I sure didn't expect the players and so in a session we had a dungeon, people going down through a multi-level dungeon. I had a player charge into the lower level of the dungeon. They hadn't finished exploring the top layer, and they charged downstairs. And there was important stuff on that floor you didn't go to, or okay, now you're down here. And so they were jumping ahead to a further encounter. And the idea of, well, they've gotten pretty beat up. They're getting to the final encounter pretty soon. If they keep going the direction they're going, they're going to bypass everything. And there's important information they didn't have yet. So, uh, I mean, I used a telepathic voice. It was a spirit that was inhabiting the dungeon there. A telepathic voice rang out saying, as a couple of failures happened and some people were pretty beat up, come this way, follow my voice. And the players can kind of get back to where they could get a place to rest and recuperate before going into the final battle, but also to get some more plot and some more information. So again, another tip or a trick there is th- have ways to draw them back to where you're going, either an NPC or some important piece of the puzzle that suddenly goes, oh, this is what we need. That's back over there. Again, they kind of direct themselves back to where they need to go. Other questions? Hope that answered your question there. See a few people watching here. Let's see. Let chat catch up for a moment. Okay. Okay. So the question is, when is it okay to make something huge happen in an encounter? Not let it be overwhelming, but make epic moments wherever you can. Um, so let's see if make sure I understand the question here. So, um, okay, something huge happened in an encounter. Um, you get kind of a feel for the story and the flow of things of when things can happen. Let things build to a certain point there. Let things, I mean, sometimes the dice just help you. Someone gets that natural 20, that big enemy just steps in and does something big. Um, and or um, some somebody blows a perception check and misses the important thing, like the guy hiding in the weeds, like hiding in the trees. It's gonna cause a big problem there. So it kind of comes down to letting the story kind of help you do that. Sometimes the dice rolls help. Sometimes the players do it. Like when the players jump in and do something, then those are the fun times. When the players just ramp something up or do something big and epic you weren't expecting, and well, I guess we're on. Let's do this. Or that was amazing. Let's see this happen and let's play this out. So, um, so at times, if you're trying to go somewhere like an epic moment, a big epic encounter is about to happen, let the story and the players guide you. If it's something that's going to happen eventually, don't rush it. Don't shove everyone to it. It's not like you want to shove them off the cliff. Let them at least struggle a bit. Let them get there. Let them find out where they're going here before you make that big thing happen. So, I hope that helps a little bit there. But I mean, really, the epic encounters, the big moments there, you either plan for a sequence of events leading up to it. So these couple things are going to happen when before this does, or something triggers it in the way the players do things. They charge off somewhere they shouldn't. They make a discovery that is a big one, and now the race is on to make things happen or to deal with the big problem that's happened. So good, good. I'm glad that answered your question there. So, um, getting Only questions from one person, somebody out there. So who else we got questions from? We have a few other viewers out there. I can see the stream is a little bit delayed, so I'll give it a moment. When it's okay to move players along, they're completely stuck. That's a tricky one. I'm not going to lie. When players are stuck, again, you don't want to railroad them. You don't want to push them in a direction there. But it's not a terrible thing to let them figure things out. Like there's oftentimes a big rush to get somewhere. There's a big rush to get to that encounter. Sometimes let them talk it out. Let them role play with each other. Give them that space and that time to sort of discover things. Maybe they're going through their notes and saying, "I know there's something about this." If you're lucky enough to have players that take notes, or they're reading back through things and going, "There was something about this we ran into," and so give them that time. You might have some little filler encounters where if there's an NPC involved, strike up a conversation. Let somebody interact with that NPC while somebody else is thinking. Then all of a sudden it's like, aha, we need to do this, or this is what we forgot about. That's where all of a sudden the encounter can take a twist. And not only that, the person that realized the solution gets that really cool aha moment of like dazzling everybody with their investigative prowess or their memory or what they figured out story wise. It's always a great moment when the players kind of figure those things out and go, oh no, and then things are off and running. So it's great. Again, if they need time, give them the time. Either let them role play it out, just sit back and let it happen, or if there's a way you can kind of engage in a conversation or give them some information along the way. NPCs are great ways if they're stuck. If they have access to someone that knows more information than they do, maybe a gentle reminder that they know somebody who's an expert in this field, or you well, you can't think of anything. You know a person that's got some resources that could help. And then, oh yeah, we should go talk to this person. And then that can drive them along there. So it really depends on how they're stuck. If they're so again, let them work it out or a gentle nudge with a reminder of something or let them go. Um, Another good question. How do you give each player their moment to shine in an encounter? Um, Really, it's a great question. And another one comes here. Um, yes. So let me finish this one here. So, giving the players a moment to shine. Um, Again, the dice can help if they do something that's cool, and especially if they haven't had a good win in a while. That player's been rolling like garbage, and I'll tell you, rolling like garbage can be fun too. Those natural ones, those crappy rolls, that can be moments of comic relief. That can be moments of ways to ramp up the tension or do something goofy that still gives the player a moment to shine or a moment to be in the spotlight. Maybe not for what they want to be in the spotlight for, but it still gives them that moment. And then when they do something super cool, play it up. Let them kind of ham it up a bit there if you're talking about role playing or if it's a combat thing. Describe that awesomeness in 20 or give them, I mean, it's almost trademark, but how do you want to do this? If a person needs a win, let them describe how they take somebody down. What does that look like? What is so again, those moments to shine are there for people. Um, so question. I'm sorry, I never touched on this. I missed it. Into random encounters into a session. How do you feeling too random? Great question actually. Because I have a friend who does random encounters. And he's got a great random encounter table that just is all kinds of weird oddball things. Some matter, some don't. Some give you a little insight into the world or something that might matter, but maybe not now. Um, I think in random encounters can be a really good tool as long as they aren't mm, too random. Um, it's a hard distinction to make, but the idea of if it's obvious it's a random encounter that has no relation to anything, like you're walking along here and a dragon attacks you. What? Why is there a dragon attacking us out of nowhere? Well, because I rolled it on the table. Okay, but the fun thing about that is that that may be like, what? Why is this so random? Then that's like, where did this thing come from? Why is this here? Does anybody else know about this thing? We better hide and get away from this thing. Maybe not like, we can't deal with this. Or they try to take it on there and somebody gets hurt. They've expended some resources. So those random encounters can do some fun things with the campaign, but this is where knowing what kind of random encounters are in an area can help. If you have like one of these five things is going to happen at some point, or these are some cool things that are in the world. Let's see if any of them come up. So yeah, so random encounters can be an effective way to flesh out the world, ways to showcase things that players might not otherwise get to know. Like they may not know that dragons even lived in this part, and there's one flying overhead. They don't encounter it, but there it goes. We're going to be real quiet and hide. Okay, it's gone. So that moment there, now you've shown them that there's something in the world, or there's something off in the distance, or a storm is rolling in. These are all random encounters that can give a little more insight to the world and make it feel alive without being too just off the wall. So hope that help with some of the random encounter things there. Again, it kind of depends on how you set it up there and how you're using them. Gentle reminders are a subtle but powerful DM. Yes, absolutely. Those DM tools of like, don't forget, yeah. And you might just say, hey, make a wisdom check. And if they roll high enough, then you go, you remember something about this. You encountered this a while back. And they're like, what? And that way it gets them thinking and finding out there. Finding out what it is there. Okay. Um, don't always love the spotlight Nat one's put on me. I agree. Sometimes those spotlights there, again, it don't want. I will say this: if a DM is super punishing to a player for a natural one, then it doesn't help. So try not to be like, well, you're roll natural one, you're screwed. That's not the spotlight we want to see, but something that gives them a little bit more of a more tension, that it makes maybe either a comic moment or can set up a more heroic moment. Like you fumble for your sword, and, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, and then next time they get that bigger attack there, or they do something else, then it can lead to a cool moment later on. So again, you kind of have to help to do that. Um, I see, Zach there. I'm not sure what you're pointing up at there, but uh, definitely uh, random encounters absolutely can be a great way effective way to flesh out the world. That's the person right there that has the amazing random encounter table. And I won't get into too much of the random encounters, but a number of them seem to involve mimics, and they're always awesome. Um, some players can be agents of chaos. How do you let them be without putting players in too much danger, assuming it isn't unreasonable chaos? Uh-huh. Good question from this person here who is an agent of chaos. Um, I will say this. Sometimes players are going to throw you for a loop. They're going to do things you didn't expect. You're going to do what? Okay, that's not going to change the way things happen there. Um, so uh, let them see the consequences of their chaotic actions, but don't just slap them down for it immediately. Give them a chance to get out of it. Give them a chance to change it out there. Give the party a chance to rush in and help if it's possible. So, um, uh, it's really helpful to with those players that are agents of chaos, let them stir things up, but don't let it derail everything. Let's Sometimes those agents of chaos get reined in by their fellow party members because they have to, um, or things can go off the rails. um, but no, I think not only referring there, but yeah. Um, so Aaron's like, well, referring to me actually, but yeah, I guess here we are. No, I'm just saying that I've been in a lot of games with a lot of chaotic players. I've been a chaotic player in a couple of games, or just in situations where I just went, you know what, I'm going to do something dumb and see what happens. And so that's often a good time to let things go off the rails, let things go in unexpected directions there. So I hope that helps there. Mimics are everywhere right now, all around us. Cool. I like mimics. They're fun. Um, as anyone watching my games and games that a couple of games I'm playing in are very aware, mimics are great. They do a lot of fun things. Um, let's see. Any other questions? Um, yeah, having players play off those random encounters, and I will say this, and this kind of brings up a memory I have from not from a game I was in, but when I heard about, is where random encounter completely derailed the game for weeks. If you're willing to let it happen, it's cool to have a digression that goes off in a weird tangent somewhere here, but the players can sometimes go really off the rails, and so you gotta nudge them back along there. But if the players again they're having fun with it, let them go. But be aware sometimes random encounters can completely derail things going on, and it may take you a session or two to bring it back around if you let it go too far. But then again, if everyone's having fun, that's what matters. um, the right time to let players wander without getting too lost. Yes, damn lost goats. Exactly. Um, so right to let players wander without getting too lost. Um, again, you sort of read to players, read the mood. If they're getting frustrated, then throw them a bone. If they're just floundering and having no idea what to happen, let something come in there. Or you again use that general reminder of like, hey, you ran into something like this. Um, so again, let them. Part of the game is them figuring things out. And if you hand it to them too easy, too soon, too often, they're going to lose interest in really delving into and going into things. So let them wander for a bit. Let them try things. Let them go off in the wrong direction. And then find a way to gently bring them back into place here. Or let them know they're going down the wrong path. Like there is times when they just go the wrong way and say, you've been going and going and there's just nothing here. Oh, well, let's go back and try something else. Again, you tell them there's nothing there without saying you're wrong. Go back. Give them a chance to find out and then come back on their own if they can. Um, ah, how do you match or provide loot to random encounters? Good question. Um, I if the loot is something that the party it makes sense for the encounter. It might be something that they encounter an item they find someplace. Um, if it's related to the story and there's a good reason to have it be there, it can be something cool. It can be something that, where did this come from? Why is this here? If it's like a shrine to a deity and there's an emblem there or some sort of a scroll tucked away someplace that gives some sort of strange information, it might be a side quest that can lead them off to somewhere if you want to go that way. So matching and providing loot and random encounters, it really depends. I mean, how big you make the encounter. If you have an idea what the random encounter might be, they're going to fight these bandits show up there, and well, it ended up being a pretty hard fight because of the way it happened. Throw them a bone, give them a little bit extra gold, give them maybe a cool item or weapon that somebody happened to have on them. I mean, it doesn't break the game to give them something. It kind of gives them an incentive to explore more and do more. So it maybe those random encounters feel a little less random because of something they find, or it feels a little more rewarding for engaging with the random encounter. So I hope that that helps there with the ideas there. What happens in a combat encounter when you know you messed up and made it a little bit too challenging? Enemies are already there, encounters already started. Hmm. Uh, that was last session. If you hadn't caught that, um, I, I will say this: if you have if you have plans for reinforcements, like there's more people waiting in the wings, or the boss is going to be super hard, but he's all of his minions are in place and nothing's been taken down, and people are starting to get hurt. It doesn't hurt. Play them stupid for a round. Have them make mistakes. Monsters make mistakes. Let's say that people go, you know what? This guy's being a pain, but that one over there, we need to take down that person. So they might shift the battlefield suddenly to go deal with something that maybe isn't tactically the best decision. So it'll give an opening to the players or give them a chance to do something. Whereas if you just like ultimately tactically sound, I'm going to take this guy out, I'm going to do this thing. Um, Keep in mind what you're doing with the players, if the players are being challenged but not overwhelmed, that's what you want. Um, I mean, we've all heard of the DMs that are the killer DMs that want to TPK their party. That's a way to run things. That is a very legitimate way of like running a very high threat game, high threat, high stakes game. Curse of Strahd is a perfect example of that. It's brutal. It's got some terrible things in it. But be aware with that it's going to happen to your game. So if the combat encounter is 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 going badly for the party, um, you can dial it back a bit. You can pull away some reinforcements or change a wave of things or see what happens because somebody might pull out a level 9 fireball using their wand of fireballs and blast half the field and take out 2 lieutenants in one round. That can suddenly turn the battle as well. And that's a great moment that suddenly what was a really nasty situation suddenly turned and became winnable. And that's a cool encounter. Those moments are great when they happen. So dial it back, change tactics, make mistakes. I mean, have somebody not be optimal for a round. Have somebody decide to act in a way that's not going to be deadly for a round, or that they retreat and heal themselves rather than attack somebody when they could have finished someone off. Again, there's lots of different ways you can do that. Okay, I think we have time for one more question if anyone's got one out there. And I think we're almost wrapping things up. Okay. All right. Well, I think this one comes up in here while I'm doing a wrap up in here. Let's go ahead and kind of dial things back. I hope you guys got some good information here. Again, encounters are so vital to making a game more fun. First time caller, long time listener. Do you have a favorite or obligatory types of encounters you feel like to use in your campaigns, or even ones you like encountering as a player? Um, it depends on the party, but some puzzle solving things can be kind of cool. I do like role playing encounters where you get a chance to interact with NPCs and try to get information, either persuasion or intimidation. Um, I tend to like those a little more. Investigation where you're finding out mysteries or solving, like putting the pieces together to a puzzle in terms of like the overall plot. Um, Combats can be a lot of fun too, especially if you've got characters that are dialed in for certain styles of combat or anything else like that. I do like to see those fun tactical type combats that can happen when you have the right player mix. So, uh, so um, again, it partially depends on your players, partially depends on DM, and again, it comes back to that when you're designing your campaign is finding out what things the players like. If they really like those intrigue, the sneaking up on things, and the stealthy takedowns and tactical things, then by all means go for it. I like those things too. Um, uh, Story for another time here, but someday remind me to tell you the story about the drop bear. We'll kind of leave it at that. Um, the drop bear was a very fun little encounter that got to be a good time there. Um, so um, thanks for everyone for being here. I know we're just basically out of time here this time around here, but I want to thank you all for being here for encounters. Next week, um, I'm kind of waffling on a couple different ideas here, so I'll get some feedback from some folks there. If you have an idea for something you want to see in a future episode here, put a comment in the comment section of the video, or message me if you're on the Discord server, or if you know me out in real life there. Throw something my way of an idea. Koalas, um, deadly, terrible koalas. Um, coming soon. No, no. But yeah, so if you have any ideas, throw them my way. Feel free to message me on Discord, or let me know ahead of time, or put a comment on the video here. Um, Last thing I want to say though, is if you like what you're seeing, spread the word, get some other folks to check it out there. If you want to kind of prep someone to being a DM, um, and want to kind of nudge them into taking the plunge and doing it, point them direction to this series there. And I'm always happy to help outside of here, or within our Discord server, or anyone else. If you have any questions. Um, Last thing I'll say is if you can subscribe to our channel here, and if you hit the bell icon now, you'll get notifications when we're going live. And I will always be posting events in our Discord channel when the shows are coming up. And I usually announce it on some social media things too. So if you're following me on there, you should see a little reminder pop up on there, usually the day of, or maybe a day or two before. But you'll see the events there in Discord and social media and stuff like that. And I want to thank you all again for being here. A lot of fun. Hope you got some good information. And if you're available, come on over for Saturday, 2 o'clock Pacific time. Avarice: The Shattered World. The party is going to be dealing with the aftermath of that crazy battle I hinted at and talked a little bit about in this in this episode here. So love to see you there. Take care, and thanks again for hanging out in Tumble Tankard. Bye.